And we're back. Welcome to yet another episode of Singular, where we, of course, discuss Record of the Year, taking you back to 1964, where presidents were being sworn in on planes, and Baby and Johnny were a year out from their relationship in the Catskills, which probably had gone downhill fast.
I didn't know why they called me Francis and Baby, right?
Nobody puts Baby in a corner.
Nobody.
Joining you as usual, looking pretty in blue, Mr.
Wait a minute.
Eric.
I want to say, you always say that Eric looks attractive, but you never ever say that I look attractive.
Because it's just known.
Wow. Always. It's always just like Vincent does the fact and figures. Why can't I get a little love?
Okay. You ready?
I'm still taping, yeah.
And looking sexy as fuck. And keeping us on track with our facts and figures, Dr. just like our First Lady, Mr. Dr. Vincent Stevens.
Thank you. I've always wanted to be called a Mr. Doctor.
You're like Mr. Mister. But
Only better.
Take these broken wings.
Dr. Stevens. Oh, wait. And I'm Susan Lombardi Verticelli.
But we knew that.
Very good.
And beautiful and sexy as fuck.
Exactly. This is, or may not be for children, depending.
It's never for children. I have to swear to that on YouTube.
Nope.
Click that button, not for kids.
Not for kids.
PG-13.
Oh no. Dr. Steve.
This has fallen apart already.
Would you like me to begin?
Yes.
Okay. So this year we've gone back to 1964. 1964 is a pivotal year because it's really when Motown begins to have breakthroughs commercially. It's the beginning of the British invasion, including, hits by the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Dusty Springfield, Petula Clark. More on that later. And so our top 10 hits of 1964. I Want to Hold Your Hand, the Beatles. She Loves You, the Beatles. Hello, Dolly, Louis Armstrong. Oh, Pretty Woman, Roy Orbison. I Get Around, the Beach Boys. Everybody Loves Somebody, Dean Martin. My Guy, Mary Wells. We'll Sing in the Sunshine, Gail Garnett. Last Kiss by J. Frank Wilson and the Cavaliers. And number 10 is Where Did Our Love Go by the Supremes. So a pretty eclectic, interesting mix of top 10 hits. So where do our nominees show up amongst all of the songs in 1964? So I'll leave that to Eric Nelson to share with us.
Yeah, so what's interesting about this year is, because it's 1964, so everything's interesting in what Vincent just described, but all of our nominees walked away with some hardware this year at the Grammys. So that doesn't always happen, but each of these songs won at least something. So the nominees were Downtown by Petula Clark, Hello, Dolly by Louis Armstrong, I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, People Who Need People by Barbra Streisand. They're pretty lucky. She was lucky that year. And the winner, The Girl from Ipanema by Stan Getz and Astrud Gilberto. So also an eclectic year when you look at all of the variety of styles. A little bossa nova, a little Broadway, a little rock and roll, and a little something that was called rock and roll, but actually was kind of Broadway and pop. So let's kick things off with our first nominee, Vincent Stevens, if you don't mind. Hey, DJ, spin that wheel and take us downtown with Petula Clark.
When you're alone and life is making you lonely, you can always go downtown. When you've got worries, all the noise and the hurry seems to help, I know. Downtown, just listen to the music from the traffic in the city. Linger on the sidewalk by the neon signs.
Susan, Where do you go when you need to feel a little brighter, a little pop in your step?
You know,
What takes you there?
I always go downtown.
Oh, let's go downtown.
So I guess I really actually just enjoyed that 20 seconds of the song with us listening to it together more than I did when I listened to it by myself. And I don't know if that's like having you two with me. And I thought I was going to enjoy it more when I listened to it by myself. I love that piano in the beginning. I guess it's Petula Clark from England. I didn't realize. I don't remember like noticing an accent, and this time I was like, "Oh, what's happening there?" Um, I like the build of it. I love the jazzy horn. I felt it was all a little bit repetitive. Um, I mean, I think it's really good background music, but I also have to say, I think this year is the year that the Grammys were clinging to the edge of the like integration cliff. I don't know what happened. I'll have to look what happened in 1965. And obviously, we've seen Grammys so white so often, but it just feels like, or maybe not even the integration cliff, but just like we're moving along, and you better come with us. And the Grammys were like, nope, nope, this is where we are. We're downtown. So I cute.
Speaking of cute, Vincent Stevens. Is this cute to
Yeah,
you?
I would echo Susan. So it's funny. I love Dionne Warwick. I love Dusty Springfield. I love Jackie DeShannon. So by definition, I should love Petula Clark because she falls into that category of kind of like 60s pop. There's something about her that I find a bit, I don't know, not squawky, but I don't love her. I don't love her voice. I don't love her persona. This song to me is like, as Susan said, it's a cute song. It's the kind of song that, lots of people covered in the 60s. It makes for very easy music. It's fine. But it's odd to me that of all of the songs that came out in 1964, that this sort of rose to the top in terms of being nominated. Yeah, I mean, I think it's cute, kind of like post-girl group, 60s pop, but it's not really that remarkable. And the idea that this will be chosen over a song by Dusty Springfield or Dionne Warwick, who I think have a lot more personality and a lot more going on, is kind of fascinating to me. And just at this point, I think, yeah, the Grammys, I think, really have always struggled to reconcile like their sort of fuddy-duddy conservatism with what's actually happening in music. The fact that, let's say, Bob Dylan or the Rolling Stones, particularly Dylan, like weren't nominated this year speaks volumes to that. So I feel like this song is like caught between somebody who's relatively young at the time, so they do represent a new vanguard, but at the same time, the musical style itself, it's not like a forward-thinking thing. It's just kind of its time. So I don't know. I don't think this was the most inspired choice, even though I think it is a cute record.
It is a cute record. I echo both of your statements. It's interesting. Vincent, you queued us up at the beginning with, the Beatles, the British invasion really happens in earnest this year. You've got the Rolling Stones also starting to happen. And you start to see this shift of more rock and roll and maybe more singer-songwriter stuff versus like this song feels to me like they're trying to meld Broadway pop with a little bit of like kids playing 45s, and as the Patty Duke show would tell us, that a hot dog makes Patty lose control, like that kind of song. And you get this, which is fun. It's totally like light and frothy, and you could totally, as the kids used to say, we could dance to it. It's a 7, or whatever. But it's not groundbreaking, but it's like so safe. Like it's the most safe song, and it's trying to pull in some of that rock and roll a little bit, but it won't give up that Broadway vibe. So happy to hear it on the radio, but why is it in this group of nominees? The other really weird thing about this song to me is, so I was looking at what was happening in the Grammys this year. So this song wins this category that did not exist very long, called the best rock and roll song. Like somehow this like with the Rolling Stones, with the Beatles, like how is this even nominated in a rock and roll category and then wins the rock and roll song of the year? It's very strange.
It's your
Vincent
great
Stevens.
grandma's idea of what rock and roll is.
Clinging to that idea.
Yeah, Susan, right, to your, like, it's not even rock and roll. Let's not even pretend, but like, we're gonna pretend we know what that term even means, and we're gonna give it to this song. So one other weird thing about this song, and then we'll move on, is the writer of this song went to New York. He was, I think, in the Brill Building. So if y'all don't know about it, look it up, but it's where a lot of these pop songs were written at that time. And he then leaves the Brill Building, which is located in Times Square, and sees Times Square for the first time and writes a song because of that. So he thinks Times Square is downtown. He doesn't know there's actually more of New York City to go visit and see. So when you talk about the lights and the bright and all the imagery in this song is actually Times Square. And it makes sense. Like, you go downtown in New York City, there aren't the things, there's a lot of cool stuff downtown in New York, but the imagery that's listed in this song does not exist in downtown New York. So weird, like super weird. Anyway, so let's move on to our second nominee, speaking of Broadway. And hello, Dolly. Let's get a little Louis Armstrong coming in. So Vincent, if you don't mind giving us a taste of this song.
All right.
Hello, Dolly, this is Louis. Dolly, it's so nice to have you back where you belong. You looking swell, Dolly, I can tell, Dolly. You still glowing, you still growing, you still going strong.
Susan, your horns always win the day. I'm just gonna say that.
I've been told
It's
that
true.
before.
I know. But you always rise to the occasion. What did you think?
Here's a little fun game I want us to play. And dear reader, I want you to play along at home too. I want you to listen to all of these songs as if they were about heroin.
Hello, Dolly.
Downtown. This song is right. Hello, Dolly. I mean, who's gonna deny the talent of Louis Armstrong? Who's he's singing, he's playing the horn. All of this is fantastic and beautiful. The song is fun. I don't know what it's doing here. Yeah. Keeping it short and sweet.
I might have an answer for this.
So,
Vincent, you always have the answer, which is another reason to have you around for all. You're sexy as fuck and you have the answers. Yeah, totally.
So Louis Armstrong is sort of arguably the most important musician of the 20th century because he literally laid the foundation for kind of what jazz playing and jazz soloing and jazz singing was about, but he sort of changed popular music. So one of the things that I think is important to realize is that there's this kind of tension between the old guard and new guard in pop music. So keep in mind, in the middle of Beatlemania, not only does Louis Armstrong have a #1 hit with this show tune, and remember, show tunes were pop music up until rock and roll. Like most pop music was sort of written for the stage. He also has a #1 album. So he really, it's kind of almost this kind of last, like a person of his generation making this impact. So I think part of the reason why he was nominated is because, Louis Armstrong is so admired by people in the industry. And the fact that someone of his generation was still having hits at that time, I think that that's sort of part of the phenomena. It's almost like, imagine if someone like Barbra Streisand or Tina Turner or Bob Dylan, imagine if they had like a hit song on the radio today. I think that people would say, oh my God, this person's still around, they're still vital. I think the vaudevillian opening is a little cutesy, but I think Louis Armstrong has such a winning personality that the fact that, again, I mean, Hello Dolly was a relatively new show tune at the time. So in a sense, Louis Armstrong is doing what Louis Armstrong has always done, right? He's taken a standard or a pop song and he's sort of given it his own thing. I believe he won the vocal category for male. So I'm glad he won that. So I feel like the nomination is almost less about this being some big achievement for him and more about just the fact that it's like this symbol that like his generation was still around, still current, still making music. But at the same time, right, after the 2 minutes or whatever, you're like, okay, cool, next. And again, we know that Louis Armstrong has so many other accomplishments. So this is more like icing on the cake than like sort of a quintessential record of his, I think.
Yeah, and I think, Vincent, to your point, this becomes, I think, not only his biggest selling single, but the album that you described becomes his biggest selling album of all time that this is on. It's amazing that that happens. And to your point, knocking, I think both in the singles and the album charts, knocks the Beatles off in both cases, which is amazing. And so this song's super fun. He sounds like he's having a great time in it. It is kind of, it's so novelty-ness that it's interesting that it had this extended life. Like it's #1 for weeks on end and whatnot. It's the kind of thing you think would be fun for like, it's like a Christmas song. Like it becomes this thing that you hear for a couple of weeks and then it kind of drops out, but it just keeps going. So yeah, like I'm glad you love it or hate the song, he cashed in, like he gets some fame out, like not that he needed fame, but like I'm glad he got a bunch of money from doing this song. So good for him. That's the silver lining. I hope he got a bunch of money. I'm just jumping to that conclusion. The other interesting thing is just looking at the at least to me, in these nominees. So Barbra Streisand's in this category for people. So she goes on to make the movie Hello Dolly, like 4 or 5 years later. He then gets put in the movie because of this song, doing this song. It's on Broadway. So Hello Dolly's on Broadway this year. Funny Girl's on Broadway this year. A few years later, they make a movie of Hello Dolly. Barbra Streisand ends up doing it instead of Carol Channing. And then because he's so well known for doing this version, he's in the movie doing this version of this song, which is like, hey, keep giving it keep giving him stuff, like keep cashing it in. So super fun. I don't know if it's record of the year or needs to be in this category, but bow down, reverence, all that kind of good stuff. So shall we move on to our next nominee, which is the Beatles, this little band who, speaking of one-hit wonders, like has this crazy year, and then look what happens. So whose hand wants to be held right at this moment? Susan's does. Susan, I'll hold your hand.
All right.
That's a different Beatles song.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something I think you'll understand. And I say that something, I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. Oh please, say to me, and let me be your man.
Susan, can I be your man? Will you let me be your man?
Yes.
At least for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. That's all it takes, baby.
I know it. We're old. We're old.
Again, can we just imagine that the song is about heroin? I wanna hold your hand. I have to say, I did not understand Beatlemania. I mean, I wasn't alive then, obviously. And I mean, the Beatles are cute. I like it. I get that I guess I didn't get what people are talking about, like the British invasion. And then I listened to this playlist and I was like, oh, maybe this is why people are like, this sound is so different. This is, for me, this epitomizes like the rock invasion, the British invasion, the different sound, the parents saying you can't listen to that music. And it also feels to me very much like why the Grammys were clinging in this year. I really enjoyed that this song sounded nothing like the other nominees. And it kind of just sparked for me why the Beatles, had at least a hit. And I'm so glad those boys found other things to do to earn some money. I enjoyed this song. I do love the hand claps. I do feel like it gets a little bit repetitive. It feels like really good montage music, but also like honoring from this playlist. Wow, what a breath of fresh air that sounds like.
Speaking of breaths of fresh air, thank you, Susan, for that setup. Vincent Stevens, Sexy as Fuck, is going to take us into the next perspective on this song.
It's a Vincent invasion. Thank you. To 2021. Yeah, I mean, I think this song obviously rocks. It's guitar driven, it's percussive, it's got the harmonies. It's just a completely different energy, certainly than the songs we've listened to already. One of the things I like about this whole playlist is that the songs are like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Except, I mean, I think the excerpt of People is from the cast album, so it's a little longer, but the actual song part's not that long. These songs just get in there and get out and get on with the show. Yeah, I mean, it's young, it's energetic. I think the one caveat I would have, and it's just in relationship to the way these things work, like this is not the Beatles' best song. It's not their weightiest song. So it is a teen pop love song. That's all it is. There's nothing profound about what it is saying. I think it's more the music that really drives it. I mean, I think the lyrics are fine, but I think that, they're almost like mildly lustful without being like too explicit or anything like that. But I mean, I think it symbolizes, right, a door opening. And the thing is, I think the Beatles were too big to ignore. Like, I think the Grammy people ignored a lot of major artists or kind of relegated them to these small categories, but I think the Beatles were just kind of undeniable. So I think that they were nominated for Album of the Year that year. So I don't think they won, but I almost wish that a more representative song of theirs was in this category, because I think that there are like, if like Hey Jude or Even in My Life or something like that was in the category, I would be like, why are we even having a podcast singular about this? There's no competition. So I think I'm glad this is in. I think it represents a new generation. And so I think that alone justifies its inclusion.
Indeed. Well, so you all have heard me drone on about this before. So in preparation for these podcasts, I try to listen to the top 100 songs of the year. So Billboard compiles these lists of the top 100 songs and they rank them, based on airplay and sales and longevity on the chart and all that stuff. So listening to this particular year, to Susan, your point, and Vincent, your point, like every time, and there's like a gazillion Beatles songs in this year. Like I don't know how they were able to record that many songs and have this many, like they like take over number one for like a good portion of the year. And they just release all of these singles. And every time you get to one of the Beatles songs on this list, you totally get it, Susan, to your point. Like you lose your shit all over again, because there's so many songs that these songs don't sound like anything else. They're so fun. There's so much energy. Vintage, or maybe they're not like groundbreaking lyrics, or they're not, like musical, milestones, but they kind of are, because they're so different than everything else. Like there's this amazing quantity of songs that are about driving your car really fast, and oftentimes those songs lead to somebody dying, like Dead Man's Curve or Leader of the Pack. Like somebody dies from driving their car or motorcycle too fast in like half of the songs in the Hot 100 that year. Or there's just these really stodgy Broadway. I love Broadway, but the songs that kind of get repackaged as Broadway style pop with like really heavy orchestrations on them feel that way. They're just like heavy and weighted down. Or then the third category that's not the Beatles is these songs about like getting married and the need to get married, or the father who's like, there's a song called White on White that I've never heard and I never want to hear again, about like this father getting his daughter ready to be given away like he's giving away his, like, it's just these strange ideologies about the way, you know, life happened in a facade, but then behind the scenes, we're not talking about the way life really actually functions. And then these songs come in, and who knows if they're facade or not, but they're so fun, and they actually feel organic, and they feel like they're speaking to emotions that people are truly having at that moment in time. So they're so fun. So God bless the Beatles for twisting and shouting. So there's that.
God bless them indeed.
Indeed. We needed a little bit of our, you know, go ahead, Susan, yeah?
God bless us, everyone.
God bless us, everyone. But they take that snow globe of our world and get it all shaken up, which is lovely. Okay, so the fourth nominee, non-winner yet, is People by Barbra Streisand. Another one-hit wonder this year. Like, it's a year of these people who do not, yeah.
Indeed. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fine.
Maybe we're lucky, but I don't know. With them, just let one kid fall down and 7 mothers faint. I guess we're both happy, but maybe we ain't. People who need people are the luckiest people.
Susan, I'm a person who needs you, so that makes me, and you, really lucky.
People who need people are the luckiest people in the world. Now imagine it's about heroin. Okay, so like we don't even have to talk about how much we love Barbra Streisand. I mean, anyone else can talk about it. It's fine. Understood. I'm not even sure I need to talk about the like Funny Girl is one of my favorite movies of all time. I didn't think Funny Lady was that great, but I think Funny Girl is fantastic. It was actually in listening to songs thinking like, I need to go back and watch that movie with my kids. Not my favorite song, right? I'm not so sure it's a standout song. It just doesn't pick up where I need it to. I mean, I think there's absolutely no denying Barbara's voice, but it kind of drags. And I also felt like the song ended at the 2:30, like 3-minute mark, and it didn't, and it kept going. And I'm not sure like why. And this is like very, I think, typical of a soundtrack song. Like it fits well in the movie. It gives Barbara that ballad. We get these beautiful like scenic shots, but I mean, you're not putting it on a playlist. Done.
Vincent is on your playlist.
Well, I was going to say, so part of the trick with this is, so there's the version that we listen to is from the soundtrack, but Barbra Streisand put out an album that year called People. So I think the version that people know is the single version. It's not necessarily the version from the soundtrack. So it's not 5 minutes, it's pared down because it doesn't have all the introductory stuff. So I think it's important to remember the year before, Barbra Streisand won Album of the Year. So she was the first woman and the youngest person ever to do that. And I think it's because, I mean, it's almost sort of like the Taylor Swift phenomena of somebody who's a young woman in her 20s who's kind of bringing something a little different. Though I think Barbra Streisand's a lot more innovative than Taylor Swift. But Barbra Streisand's important because she represented a new generation of Broadway singing actresses. Like, if you listen to her first album, there's a lot of irony and wit, and there's a new sensibility, right? She's very different than a Doris Day or Joe Stafford. She's bringing a different perspective. So I actually think this, if we were to go through, if we look at this list of all the songs that could be called a standard, I think People is, of this group, is at the top. Like, lots of people covered this song, and lots of people have sort of been inspired by Barbara. So I think this song is so iconic. It's one of the kind of few stone cold classics in this group, I think. And so even if it's not necessarily my favorite song of hers, like I think the singing is beautiful, the arrangement's lovely, it's got a nice melody. So for me, this is almost like new Broadway. So that in and of itself, I think makes it important. And I think this is one of the few songs of this era that ends up being a standard in the way that we think about standards that came before rock and roll. So I think it's got some historic significance. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think it's lovely. I think it's more substantive than Downtown. I think it's less of a novelty than Hello Dolly. And at the same time, it's not innovative like I Want to Hold Your Hand. But it's funny, Barbra Streisand is the same age as the Beatles, but she sort of is infamously like a traitor to her generation in that she's not a rock and roll singer. So I feel like what this represents, right, is that crooning still existed in the rock era, that new songs and new singers and voices were coming out. So Broadway didn't have to be relegated to the past. It could still be new. But yeah, I share Susan's love of Funny Girl. I mean, Don't Rain on My Parade. Come on. Anyway.
Vincent, you're like a bola bada. Let's just say that and agree. We don't let's not even ask. We don't need to ask. Everyone knows. So just works. It is, I think, the to add to that, Vincent, because I echo what both of you have said. And what's nice about pop music is, as we've done this over as many different years as we have, love it or hate it, there's always a mix of some style going on. So the fact that, I Want to Hold Your Hand can exist on the charts with Hello Dolly, that song, that can exist with people on the charts, is kind of love them or hate them. There is something nice about that variety. So I'll just say that. This song, I'm so glad she won the vocal category for, I think, female pop singing that year, because to me, what's so great about this song is her delivery of it. Like, her voice just is so smooth and full of texture, and she makes the delivery of a song in a Broadway, like an actress style. Like, she adds a performance of not just the notes, but she tells the story behind the words in the singing that you don't often hear on radio pop music, like just the pauses and the inflection and all that kind of stuff. She just gets it across. It's so great. I don't, Susan, like you, I don't love the song itself, and I think the lyrics are a little trite and they don't all work for me, but she elevates it in such a great way. And it's just, it's lovely to hear someone at the top of their game doing a really amazing thing. So I would never put this on a playlist. I don't like it as a song, but I love her singing it, and I love getting to hear her voice at this stage and just the freshness in the way it sounds. So go Barbra. It's lovely. So, okay. Let's move on to our winner. What won that year? The girl from Ipanema. So Vincent, do you mind if I'm even pronouncing that right? I probably screwed up the pronunciation of it, but I'm not good at that.
Olha que coisa mais linda, mais cheia de graça, ela, menina que vem e que passa, num doce balanço, caminho do mar. Moça do corpo dourado do sol de Ipanema, o seu balançado é mais que um poema, é a coisa mais linda que eu já vi passar. Ah, porque estou tão sozinho.
So that excerpt had Yao Gilberto, not Astrud, but she comes on later. So it's easy song to find.
I am embarrassed to say that anytime someone says the girl from Ipanema, I always confuse it with the Beach Boys song. Like the little girl from Ipanema. No? Oh, it's Pasadena.
Oh, the old lady from or whatever that song is, which is also out this year. It came out the same year. So
So
makes
I
sense.
always confuse them. And then whenever this plays and I'm like, what is this again? And someone's like, this is the girl from Ipanema. And I'm like, is it? Oh, it's, oh. Why is this song so soothing? I really got into this song. I loved it. And I think it was like, kind of like with a nod to the Beatles, like, oh, there is something very different going on here. And I loved the multi languages, and I really felt that this song sounded timeless. I didn't feel like there was a time and date stamp on this. I feel like you could play this song now, not necessarily on the radio. I don't think it's going to be like a radio hit, but you could play this song so many places, and it's like, oh, I'm leaning in to listen to this. Just kind of the fun play with the language and the beat of the song, and the guitar. I really enjoyed this. I might be playing on my cards right here, right now, but I was like, oh, oh yeah. Whew. Think about his heroin.
Says the girl from Philadelphia.
215.
Yeah, so bossa nova is was built out of the Brazilian samba, musical family. And only a few years earlier, it was sort of breaking out and crossing over from Brazil to America. But this song really kicked the door wide open. So I love Brazilian music. I think it's the most beautiful music in the world. It's so harmonically rich. And there's a genre called Saudade, which is Suadade, and it's sort of like wistful, nostalgic, melancholic, yet bright. It's like all of these. There's actually no English equivalent to the word, but it's sort of this. I think the song epitomizes that. There's something very wistful about it. I think obviously there are a lot of versions of this song. They get very loungy, but I think that what I love about this song is that, and just bossa nova in general, is that it shows you that in the early 60s, you weren't just relegated to either rock and roll or like bland, easy listening music. There were lots of other things happening in music. And the fact that this is kind of a hybrid between elements of jazz and elements of Brazilian pop music, I don't know. I think it's a very special song. I think it reflects the diversity of what was beginning to happen in the mid 60s when music was becoming, I think, more globalized in different ways. So again, I think this song is a good example of what was happening in the 60s. And I'm glad it's here because I think a lot of music that's not in English is often overlooked by the Grammys, especially in the 60s. So yeah, I think this is a very special song, a classic song that people still cover today. It's a standard, it stands out. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, I loved it too. It was so great. I mean, it's to echo all the things you were all saying. And it's, it's been covered so many times. So, I've heard the song, in different ways from different people on, in different capacities and venues. And it made me realize like, oh, the original version, if this was the original version, maybe it had even existed before it, but this particular version, I had little familiarity with, and was so glad to get to spend time with this version of this song. And I like it every time I hear it, not just this version, but like every time it gets rearranged or somebody updates it or does something with it. It's always fabulous because I think the song has such good bones. And I love that, the journey that both of you described of, the different song styles within it, the different languages within it, how it lends itself well to blending with different kinds of voices. Like, it's so perfect. I loved hearing it. And I loved getting to spend time with it. And I'll just give a plug to a different version of it, and then we can move on. There's the Red Hot series, which is a series of, for the kids playlist, but they were CDs and albums back in the 90s to raise money for AIDS charities. And they have all these, there's a Gershwin one called Red Hot and Gershwin. And then there's one called Red Hot and Rio that has a version of this song on it by Crystal Waters that's super fun and like has a great amped up dance beat at times. Not that there's not already a samba and a dance beat in this song, but it's a fun, another take if you're looking to explore this song a little further. Hear one of the other versions of it. But I love it.
love the Red Hot series, to your point. It's
Yeah,
a
it's
very, very, very nice. I feel like, in the digital era, right? I feel like we are missing a little bit of that. Like the idea of like, we're going to do this theme compilation. I mean, you can still do that through Spotify or through streaming services, but there was something kind of fun about that.
yeah, like those kind of like playlisty albums or people coming together under a genre. You just don't get that because why would you buy a CD anymore? Like you would just go find, yeah. So lovely. But so check it out. But this song's so great. Loved hearing it. It put me in such a wonderful spirit, similar to what you both described. So who should have won? Who should have been nominated? Let's start there. Vincent, you queued us up with a bunch of the variety in this year in your kickoff for us. So I'm going to mix it up and start with you on who should have been in this list. So Vincent, if you don't mind kicking us off with some thoughts there, that would be.
So two things that are interesting. Number one, between I think some point in 1963 and some point maybe early 1965, Billboard eliminated the R&B chart. And they eliminated it because there was so much overlap between what was previously sort of very segregated. There was so much overlap between songs that were crossing over that they were like, we don't need a separate R&B chart. So I think that's important because this is where Motown is rising, because Motown's whole theme was to be the sound of young America. So Motown they didn't say we're making music for this one audience. They were like, we're intentionally making records that are really accessible, that everybody can enjoy, etc. So I would say Dancing in the Street by Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, hello. Basically anything by the Temptations, but Baby I Need Your Loving, The Way You Do the Things You Do, come on. This is also when Dionne Warwick is having a lot of her biggest initial hits. So Anyone Who Had a Heart, Walk On By. So in other words, there is no shortage of great music happening in 1964. Like the idea that Downtown is better than Walk On By, or the idea that, love Louis Armstrong, but is Hello Dolly really better than Dancing in the Street? So in other words, there's literally, the thing is, my guess is that in 1964, it's like, oh yeah, Motown, that's like for the kids, or oh, Dionne Warwick, like, yeah, that's for whatever. But I'm like, we know today, looking back, like these are classic songs that just people have covered Dancing in the Street. No one's ever gonna do it better than Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. People have covered Anyone Who Had a Heart or Walk On By. It's never gonna be better than Dionne Warwick. So I feel that just going there, I mean, those are all hit songs. So yeah, I think that there's no shortage. I mean, again, the Beach Boys are breaking through at this time. Oh Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison. I don't know if that would be in my top 5, but I mean, that's a classic song. So I just feel like there's a lot. Oh, and I think It's Over. I think It's Over by Roy Orbison is also a hit. So this is a year that's overflowing with alternative choices. So yeah.
Speaking of alternative choices, Susan.
I think, Vincent, you hit on so many of mine. I asked my smart speaker, who we are not endorsed by, to play me the top songs of the year. And I was kind of shocked by what I was hearing, because these nominees are not indicative of what was happening in music during 1964. So, I mean, I kind of, when Pretty Woman came on, I was like, oh my goodness, like, first of all, like, obviously it was a hit with the movie Pretty Woman, but like, you would play this on the radio today and people are going to sing along to it. Where Did Our Love Go? I mean, where are the Supremes, ladies and gentlemen? To Vincent's point, My Guy. And then I also was listening to your point earlier, Eric, about death and driving. Like, please bring my baby back to me. Which one's that? She went to the Lord above. You like that one?
Yeah, and he's the one who gets in the accident. Like, he causes the accident. That's
like
the weird part.
Right. The Lord took her away from me. Like, no, blunt force trauma took her away from you if you were driving too fast.
Is
That's
that
right.
Dead Man's Curve? Is that one?
No, that's another one.
That's another one.
So many. What I won't get the melody right, but yeah, it's a different song. Dead Man's Curve is like Jan and Dean, or I can't remember. But this is a different one about driving too fast and hitting a guardrail, and then your girlfriend dies. Yeah.
Got it.
Got it. I mean, there is no world where Walk On By isn't the best song. Like, it's, and her version, I mean, to Vincent, your point, like, the song's been covered, like, Dionne Warwick and her delivery of that song, the way that song is produced and orchestrated in that, like, it just wins the day every day. It still breaks my heart every single time I hear it. Like, it is a watermark for, I don't, it's just astonishing, and how that's not included here. Or Dancing in the Street. Like, Vincent, I mean, I'm just reiterating things that you've already said, so I apologize for retreading those things, but they're just so great. And, you know, the Beatles has this astonishing year. They're at number one, like, half of the year. Almost the other half belongs to the Supremes. Like, they just, like, number one, like, they start on this journey where they can't go wrong. So Baby Love, Where Did I, like, there's just how they didn't end up in this category is also mind-boggling. I will add one other, because you all have said so many great ones, but the Kinks, You Really Got Me Going. Like, that takes us in a whole new direction musically, and that song has lived on. So just, I don't know if that's record of the year, but there's an energy and a propulsion of that song and where music is going that is not represented in what gets nominated this year. So that's my additions. But and You Don't Own Me by Leslie Gore. Like, how is that song, like, that also has continued on, and, you know, is this anthem today. So, but Walk On By. Walk On By.
And I'm sorry, I forgot, and it reminded me, I watched the movie One Night in Miami 2 weeks ago, or last week, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And Sam Cooke actually did not get to do A Change Is Gonna Come because it came out after he died. So he didn't, like, it's not like they put out the single, then he was on talk show singing it. But A Change Is Gonna Come came out in 1964, like, obvious. And Blowing in the Wind came out on a 1963 album. I think Peter, Paul, and Mary had the hit with it. But, like, as far as, like, actual composition, like, again. So it's just one of these things where it's a gold mine. It's a gold mine.
It's a gold mine, indeed. Cling it on, Susan. So who should have, did the right people walk away with the gramophone this year? So, Susan, let's kick it to you. Who should have won?
I am going with the girl from Ipanema, not to be confused with the little lady from Pasadena.
They often are, you know, mentioned.
The little lady from Pasadena.
Totally different song.
Okay.
Very
I
different.
guess because I often don't hear the title in The Girl from Ipanema, right? Like, what you know is like bum, ba-da-da-dun, dun, da-dee-da, boop, ba-ba-dee-da, dee-da, doo-doo-doo, ba, ba-bee-da, boop, boop, boop-boo-doo-doo. So,
Very good.
Dr. Stevens.
Vincent, who is your winner?
So this was difficult because I thought, well, you know, the Beatles are such an obvious standout, even though, like, I think I own all of these records in some way, shape, or form.
You do.
But I thought, you know, in re-listening to this might open me up, but I have to agree with Susan. I think The Girl from Ipanema, it represents a happy medium between, it's something new, it's not rock and roll, but it's something new and different. And it's forward-thinking and progressive, but it also is very melodic and it's romantic. And I just think it's bringing something different. I think that there are other songs that the Beatles would later release that I think are substantive and amazing. I mean, I'm not going to go through all of them. There's too many, but in other words, I think that, you know, the Beatles were definitely recognized this year, but I do think that this song is something special, something different, something unique. That, like, I don't think there's any other Brazilian pop song that's crossed over in the same way. So that in and of itself makes it special. So I think the Grammy people got it right this year.
I'm going to make it 3 for 3 because it is a great song. Though I struggled to, like, I wanted to give this to I Want to Hold Your Hand because it's like this song is so fun, but it isn't record of the year in the way that I think, you know, it's, I don't know. There's something about, I love it, but it is, and as much as I wanted to give it, I was like, this girl, just wins in all of these ways. I don't need to reiterate all the points, the great points that you two have made. I just echo it all.
Baja, who's one of our favorites. You know,
I
she
love
wrote a
her.
song called Astrud on her first album. As a tribute to Astrud Gilberto. So, yeah. So Astrud Gilberto is very iconic. And you know, she actually was not a professional singer. She was married to Yao Gilberto, who we hear at the very beginning. And he was like, I need somebody to sing this. So she's not a trained singer. She's not, and many people have said the sort of awkwardness is actually part of the charm. And so, I mean, she went on, I mean, she's still alive. She went on to record lots of albums, but this opened the door for her. So it's almost a happy accident that this song even happened. Go figure.
Lovely. I'm glad it won. It's so good.
So good. Well, like the three of us, not trained singers, but still making our mark. This has been
so good.
So good.
So good.
So good. Just natural raw talent. This has been yet another episode of Singular. Don't forget to click like and subscribe down below and ring that bell for all the notifications. And of course, follow us on Twitter at Podcast Singular and on the Facebook at Podcast Singular. From Vincent, Eric, and myself, it's been lovely spending another afternoon with you. And remember,
it's an honor
just to be
nominated. Yeah.
Very
ciao.
good. Ciao.